KWAZ Radio. Make sure you check out the other programs on KWAZ Radio, including the Revolutionary Matron, the Harsh Reality Podcast, and of course the Bitter Medicine Podcast. Today we're going to continue our deep reading of The Wretched of the Earth. This one's episode 17 of 20. This is what we're doing for Black August, pages 192 to 204. Black August is, I just decided, look, let's just do something every weekday at 11 a.m. Give, plus or minus a few minutes. Let's just do something, So we're reading through this book, Wretched of the Earth. It's proven to be better than I expected. I was supposed to read it for a long time. I haven't, but now that I'm reading it, I'm like, yeah, this is actually pretty decent. If you're in the chat, make sure you just give a greeting, Em Hotep, all that jazz. Other than that, let's just jump right into it. So you see on page 192, it says case study number 3. So he's going through, I think, 10 case studies, each of them showing how there are psychotic reactions to colonization, to war. The first two were pretty, like you could have wrote a story about those, The first one being the man whose wife sticks up for him. She's a ride or die, He doesn't love her, right? But he's transporting people and to the battlefield and away from the battlefield. The French don't like it, so the French capture his wife. He doesn't love her. During their marriage they kind of go, he goes to her house, and they share a home. He comes home and he kind of just eats and goes to bed. He doesn't even talk, he doesn't have sex or anything, he just whatever. But notwithstanding his lack of love for her, when she's captured by the French, she doesn't say anything, to the point where the French rape her and then gang rape her. And then all she does when they release her is she writes her husband and says, forget about me, And him unknowing, he's like, yeah, sure, I'll go about my business, go about my life, I'll go, why would I want a rape victim? And he finds out that a lot of people do take in these rape victims, sometimes even purposely. And not just that, he realizes that, this woman loved him. And he had his own erectile dysfunction or impotence in a sense, because he was trying to, mess with other women, but he couldn't. So now he says, look, I'm going to go marry her, Sad story, but a story, And the other one was the guy who was massacred. His whole village was massacred. And then in reaction, he got some homicidal tendencies too, and they had to treat that. And that's something to realize too, that there's going to be psychotic moments for any people, and you have to realize too that there might be some psychosis going on right now. So Melanin says shalom, right? Kofi says greetings, and Chaka, I think he says something, salami and bacon or something like that. I don't know what that means. All right, I'm gonna get in trouble now. But that's a thing that they say. Anyway, Revolutionary Matron says greetings. So Revolutionary Matron's here, Kofi's here, Brother in 100 Cents here, and Kofi's here. Oh, sorry, and Chaka's here. All right, so let's go into case number 3. Let's go to case study number 3 and just see what's going on. So this is a major depressive disorder with mood congruent psychotic features following the murder of a woman while briefly psychotic. So this guy, as you can tell, I mean, he already tells you, the guy's going to murder a woman while he's under some sort of psychosis. And that in and of itself is going to mess him up. Now, realistically speaking, if somebody just murders a woman under a psychotic experience, you don't really treat them, you kind of just treat them, but it's whatever it is, right? So D, a former student, ALN fighter, 19 years old, 19 and he's killing people, right? And it's not just that he's killing people, it's just that, well, it depends on who she is, to be honest. This is something that's really important for us to understand about the human condition, is that realistically speaking, things depend on who these people are. It shouldn't, you might say, right? All human life is equal and all that kind of stuff. But when you really study the world, you realize that's not even the case. That's never been the case. And because that's never been the case and that's not the case, coming at the world from that perspective is going to hamper you. A part of what the Wazungu does is that Wazungu tries to hamper you with intellectual fallacies that, taken too seriously, will, tie your hands behind your back. Thou shalt not murder, right? While he's killing you. But then you say to yourself, no, if I want to get to heaven, I will not kill anybody, who's killing me. I will not kill a person who's killing me, which is ridiculous. Well, and of course, heaven is, I don't really concede to that, but, in case somebody does, since what it's under the impression that I do. But the point being that Wazungu has that, like it's a subtle weapon of his. And of course, I'm thinking real talk. Like, I don't know what other book I'm going to write. Because originally I was trying to write a book on different professions and so forth. But I'm thinking that I might have to just do like a philosophy book straight up. Because, there's a lot that's philosophically missing from our people. But anyway, let's keep going. When he had arrived at the center, he had already been ill for several months. His symptoms were characteristic. When he already arrived at the center, he was already ill for several months. His symptoms were characteristic: deeply depressed, dry lips, and constantly moist hands. Heaved, constant sighs, persistent insomnia, 2 suicidal attempts since the onset of the disorder. Now, again, he's trying to kill himself. Why? Because he murdered some woman. Now, again, you have to wonder what woman, but still. 2 suicide attempts since the onset of the disorder. During the conversation, showed signs of auditory hallucination, like he's hearing something. Sometimes his gaze fixed for a few moments at a point in space while his face lit up, giving the impression he was seeing something. Incoherent thoughts, behavior known in psychiatry as blocking, where the start of a gesture or phrase is suddenly interrupted for no apparent reason. But one feature in particular caught our attention. The patient talked of his blood being spilled, his arteries drained, and an abnormal heartbeat. He begged us to stop the hemorrhage and not let them come into the hospital to suck the lifeblood out of him. From time to time, could no longer speak and asked for a pencil. Wrote, "Have lost my voice. My whole life is fading away." This display of deep personalization led us to believe he had reached a serious stage. Several times in the course of our conversation, the patient mentioned a woman who would come and persecute him when night fell. Having previously learned that his mother, whom he adored, had died, and that he would never get over his loss, at the moment his voice became muffled and a few tears appeared. I turned to cross-examination to the mother image. When I asked him to describe this woman who was haunting, even persecuting him, he told me she was no stranger, that he knew her very well, and he was the one who had killed her. The question was then of knowing whether we were in the presence of an unconscious guilt complex after his mother's death, as Freud describes in his Mourning and Melancholia. So you see, and you're pretty much gonna see this all day, but he's applying Wazungu's psychiatry. He's applying Freudian analysis, Freudian so on and so forth. So that's why in the last one, when the guy, is just like he's sickened by, like, he rips up a picture of his daughter, he's like, this must be incest, and it's like, no, it's just he's just ripping a picture of his daughter, right? This is something to understand. I want you to understand that a lot of people, even today, who are going to apply psychiatry for black people, are going to come about with this, with this weird analysis, this weird, Freud just writing things. And Freud may very well be describing the European mentality. He might well be doing that. It might just be a bunch of ridiculous stuff, but he might be explaining the European mentality, which you don't necessarily apply that to other people. Now, of course, this Algerian person may not be an African, so, it is what it is. But at the same time, that's something just to bear in mind, right? So Freud describes in his Mourning and Melancholia. We asked him to tell us more about this woman since he knew her so well and was supposed to have killed her. That is how we managed to reconstruct the following story. So that's another thing I want you to clarify is that, so these people come in and they have these kind of disorders, but they're not open and talking about it right away. It takes moments, because there's still this sort of arrogance, this sort of ego that comes when you're engaging a new person who's supposedly an expert, who's supposedly going to fix things out, but you can't fix it yourself, So you're skeptical already, and you know they're not going to be helpful, and you don't trust them either, because you go to somebody and you tell them, hey, look, I killed somebody. If you tell it to the wrong person, you will be killed. You don't know if the other person is trying to help you. You don't know who the other person is. You don't know if it's related to the person you killed. There's a lot of factors in this, and this is something, and I mean, it behooves us to, and I could actually concede to this, right? But it behooves us to not include this sort of stuff in our own curricula, in our own university structures, in a sense. One thing that people don't realize, or people forget, See, I don't remember if Amos Wilson was a psychologist, but I think he was a psychiatrist. You know, because I vaguely remember when I first heard of Amos Wilson, somebody was like, "Yeah, he's a psychiatrist, like a child psychiatrist or something," and I was like, "That's not even impressive at all." But I remember having that impression, right? I say that not to say anything about him, but more or less to give context to that particular field, how it's different from a psychologist, right? A psychiatrist is what it might be what Fanon is, because it sounds like that's what Fanon's doing, and it's actually pretty interesting that a lot of the respectable black people that we have, a lot of the black scholars that we have today, were in fact psychiatrists, So the other example would be Francis Cress Welsing. The other example would be Bobby Wright, right? And another example would be Umar Johnson, So a lot of these people are psychiatrists. The thing I heard when because again, that's vague, it's hard to remember. When I first heard of Amos Wilson, it was like 10 years ago, 12 years ago. Some of you hadn't heard of him yet, So when I first heard of him, there wasn't a YouTube back then, The lady who was informing me about him was letting me know that you could. Well, it wasn't on YouTube yet. She was like, she was like, we were exchanging DVDs, we were exchanging DVDs and VCRs, like not VCRs, VHS. So it's really long time, right? I say that to say this, that well, actually no, this is that I had a Khalid Muhammad. She gave me a Khalid Muhammad recording that was on a tape recorder. So she handed me a tape recorder to listen to a Khalid Muhammad speech, but so it's old school, right? Anyway, but the thing with Amos Wilson, yeah. So apparently he was like he would engage kids in prisons, right? Like kids in juvenile, and he would talk to them about certain things. And one of the things I remember her saying, or him saying, or somebody saying, was something along the lines that a lot of the kids that he would talk to, who were in the juvenile detention center, or who were early people in jail, were there for defending their mothers. Like somebody like their father-in-law or their mother's boyfriends would be fighting their mothers, and then they would intervene, and then they would go to prison for it, But anyway, all that to say that it's actually pretty interesting psychiatry, but it's dangerous if the psychiatrist is studying Freud and all these European psychologists, which they would, because remember again, if you go to university, right, you're going to university to serve the class, like the upper class. You're going to serve the colony itself. You're not going to serve your people, you're going to serve the colony, right? And a lot of us kind of are dismissive of people who learn how to do things for Wazungu, but that's the whole point. That's the whole reason why Wazungu has that institution. He lets you into an institution that is towards his psychiatry. And then you go and you're not learning African psychiatry because African psychiatry will not benefit his people. That was actually one of my issues. I just want to clarify. One of my issues with us, a lot of times people listen, I put up a video and it has Amos Wilson in the title or something, and someone says, that's the best African-centered psychologist, blah, blah, blah. And it's like, it's not, you're not necessarily African-centered just because you your clientele is mostly black folk. The centering, like if you're studying Freud and Pavlov and whomever, that's not African-centered. You might have African clientele, but that wouldn't make you African-centered, because if you're learning the exact same things and using the same exact principles, like kind of like how right here, Fanon is using Freud on a quote unquote African population. Now, of course, they're Arab population or whatever, but you don't call him African-centered or Arab-centered because he's using Freud. That's like it's a nuance. It's a nuance, but it's just a nuance that I just want people to grasp while they can. So let's see if let's see if the comments people gonna be hating. I already see, you could just at a glimpse know somebody's hating. Chaka as usual. All right, so Revolutionary says there are many variables, right? I just got to the point of understanding fully why people had left has to leave. I also came to understand why Wazungu worked so hard to stop communication. All right, so I'm trying to figure out, all right, so Revolutionary, if you could clarify what you meant by I just got to the point of understanding why people that left have to leave. Like what people? Because I think I didn't see the comments while I was reading, so that's my fault. Chaka says, what about the sci-fi book? Oh, the sci-fi book. What about the sci-fi book I'm writing? Yeah, I gotta wait till I'm out of Africa. I don't want to just write too many things while I'm in America. You know, it gives the wrong impression. I might write a short story or two, but I don't want to write too many things because, you know, I'm just gonna keep writing in America, and I really want to put fire. Like one of the things in life is that you have to put fire under your feet. You know what I mean? You have to burn bridges if you're trying to go somewhere. You know. And you have to put fire on your feet if you're trying to move, you know? A lot of people, like what we tend to do is we tend to like be comfortable in not doing what we need to do, right? Or continue to have the bridges, you know, like continue to talk to our exes or continue to, you know, all that kind of stuff. So you don't, or continue, or like, you know, have F buddies, you know what I mean? So then we're not really serious about, like we don't have that same urge to go out and hunt. You know, if you have food in the fridge, you don't want to go to the grocery store. You know what I mean? Revolutionary says, has, not has. Okay. I get to the point where of understanding why people that left had to leave. Okay. Maybe a book or a series that describes the phrases of philosophy, each one identifying a path to liberation. Yeah. I mean, that's what I'm saying. I'm thinking, my thing is that I don't want to make things too firm before I go to Africa and then like basically like go to Africa and not really apply anything, or like I want to be open to the possibility of Africa really changing my mentality. I don't expect it would, but I want to be open to it. I want to write after, you know. Let's see. Mchaka says not impressive. Yeah, psychiatry. Well, back again, like I was at that point, I was an astrophysics grad student. You know what I mean? When you're an astrophysics grad student, you don't look at anything as impressive. You know, like it's a different time. You know, like I was like 20 something in grad school. You know, it's like you're not like you're probably like somebody tells you, yeah, I got an arts degree. You're just like, okay, you know what I mean? Like, okay, cool. You're not impressed. Like she might have been more impressed because she was like a regular like worker or something, like an independent. You know, like she wasn't necessarily college trained. I was like PhD, you know, like in the bag, kind of. All right. I'm talking to psychiatrists can prescribe medications since they have a medical degree. Psychologists focus more on psychotherapy and other cognitive behavioral techniques. Psychiatrists can and do use other therapeutic techniques, but can also prescribe medication. Main difference is the medical background degree. So I'm guessing that, well, I would think psychology would be more impressive, but I feel you on that. Revolutionary says facts and says, I better understand why Africans that left this place in previous generations had to leave. You understand why Africans who left like America had to leave? Like you mean like wait and leave for like Liberia? You mean, or just leave like repatriate? But yeah, like elaborate on that. That sounds interesting. Grad school equals pretentious. Yeah. When you're in grad school, you feel like you've accomplished quite a bit. You know. You do get a little pretentious. I mean, look at Mchaka, right? All right. Anyway, sorry. I like the world where I had been a student to join the underground resistance movement. You know, and I left the town where I had been a student to join the underground resistance movement. Now, I just want to say something for you guys in terms of writing, right? You don't actually use quotation marks if somebody doesn't say all this, right? But at the same time, you know, it's okay. But it's actually really hard to reconstruct a story where you don't use quotation marks, but you know, just generally speaking, you shouldn't use quotation marks unless it's a direct quote. Either way, I left the town where I had been a student to join the underground resistance movement. After several months, I received news of home. I learned that my mother had been killed at point blank range by a French soldier and two of my sisters taken to the barracks. To this day, I don't know where they are. I was terribly shaken by my mother's death. My father had died some years back. I was the only man in the family, and my sole ambition had always been to do something to make life easier for my mother and sisters. One day, we went to a large estate owned by a white settler where the manager, a notorious colonial, had already killed 2 Algerian civilians. It was night when we arrived at his house, but he wasn't at home. Only his wife was in the house. On seeing us, she begged us not to kill her. I know you have come for my husband, she said, but he isn't there. Interesting. Hold on a second. So I don't know if this was when his, all right, so, one day they went to her house. Okay, so this is after his family, his mother was killed and his sisters were kidnapped. They went over to a notorious colonial, a white boy who had two Algerians, who had already killed two Algerian civilians, right? So it was night when we arrived at his house, but he wasn't there home. Only his wife was in the house. On seeing us, she begged us not to kill her. Now, of course, like again, these white people, like these white women are there enabling these men, right? They're there. Again, the system, the true issue with the system is the settler colonialism, okay? The white woman is not a settler. You understand? Now, she is going to be like, I know you've come for my husband, she said, but he isn't here. How many times have I told him not to get mixed up in politics, right? Now, it's not that he's not mixed up. He's never not mixed up in politics because he is a settler colonist. Okay? We decided to wait for the husband, but I kept looking at the woman and thinking of my mother. She was sitting in an armchair and her thoughts seemed to be elsewhere. I was asking myself why we didn't kill her. And then she noticed I was looking at her. She threw herself on me, screaming, "Please don't kill me. I've got children." The next minute, she was dead. I've killed her with my knife. My commander disarmed me and gave me orders to leave. I was interrogated by the district commander a few days later. I thought I was going to be shot, but I didn't give a damn, right? So after the medical and legal reports had stressed the pathological nature of the act, the legal proceedings initiated by the ALN and staff recorders were dropped. So, see that? So he kills a lady. Like, she's like, "Please, don't kill me. I have children." And, it probably triggers to him, like, you fucking French. Sorry, I don't mean to curse, but, you get that. But, like, sometimes it's like, you French killed my mother and took my sisters. And now you, as a French woman, is pleading against me. Don't kill me. I have children. It's like you French came over to my native land and crushed and destroyed us. Like, just did what you did. And now you're begging for your life when I get the upper hand. And that's what you have to understand, too, that people will beg for their lives when they get the upper hand. One thing you got to realize about white people is they're afraid to die. Right? But anyway, and then I began to vomit after eating and I slept badly. After that, this woman would come every night asking for my blood. And what about my mother's blood? So who's this woman? I guess he's saying that he got haunted. See what I'm saying? Like, don't like that. White women be witches. Like, how in the world she start haunting him? Mchaka says, "Facts, I am, or I can be." Wow, what's with the profanity? Anyway, Ochaka said he can be pretentious. Yeah, he's pretentious. You know what I mean? Like, he's a young buck, and he's talking about, I can't curse. Like, where you get this from, man? You know what I mean? All right. As soon as the patient went to bed at night, the room was invaded by women, all the same. It was the same woman, duplicated over and over again. They all had a gaping hole in their stomach. They were bloodless, sickly pale, and terribly thin. The women tormented the young man and demanded their blood back. At the moment, the sound of rushing water filled the room and grew so loud it seemed like a thundering waterfall, and the young patient saw the floor of his room soaked in blood, his blood, while the women slowly got their color back and their wounds began to close. Soaked in sweat and filled with anxiety, the patient would wake up and remain agitated until dawn. So this is pretty interesting. So, all right, let's just finish. The young patient had been treated now for several weeks, and the one-year-old nightmare symptoms have virtually disappeared. His personality, however, remains seriously flawed. As soon as he thinks of his mother, this disemboweled woman looms up disconcertingly in her place. As unscientific as it may seem, we believe only time may heal the dislocated personality of this young man. So, and that's what I'm saying about the world, right? The world is such that if, like it's not what is right. It might makes right. The reality is this: going to a woman's house and stabbing her in the stomach and watching her bleed is a normal death penalty, okay? If that woman is a part of your community, right? If that woman is a part of your community. But because this woman is not, because you're fighting a war against this woman's people, it's legal. I mean, not legal, but your people, your community is not going to really hold you at fault. That's the world. I really want us to grasp that in fact is the world. That's the world. It sounds bad, but it's good. It's good. It's unfortunate, but it's good. And that's also a thing you have to realize too, that when you're at war with another people, your people are not, like, you are the responsibility for protecting your people. And people will attack your family. People will attack your loved ones. It was one of the things that I really avoided about going online, showing my face online, was that I understood that Wazungu would attack my family. I understood that, you know. So I just don't get my family involved. Well, I try not to get my family involved, but of course now my family, pretty much, most of them passed away already, so it's whatever. Anyway, right? Anyway, so case number 4: a European police officer is suffering from depression victims. An Algerian patriot suffering from stupor. Okay, so they said a European police officer. So now my thing is, why are they treating these white people for psychiatry? But whatever. It might be that I don't actually know. All right. So A, 28 years old, married without children. We have learned that he and his wife had been undergoing treatment for several years to try and have children. He is referred to by his superiors because of behavioral problems. The immediate rapport proved to be fairly good. The patient spoke to us spontaneously about his problems. On good terms with his wife and parents-in-law, good relations with his colleagues at work, and well thought of by his superiors. Now, again, he's a European, right? What troubled him was having difficulty sleeping at night because he kept hearing screams. In fact, he told us that for the last few weeks before going to bed, he closes all the shutters and stops up the window. It is summer, to the utter despair of his wife, who is suffocating from the heat. So, okay, so in the summer, he closes the window. Apparently, you should have the window open in that hot environment, right? He also stuffs cotton in his ears so as to muffle the screams. Sometimes in the middle of the night, he switches on the radio or puts on some music so as not to hear the nightly din. He consequently explained to us his tribulations in great detail. A few months ago, he was transferred to an anti-FLN brigade. To begin with, he was assigned to watching a few buildings and cafes. But after a few weeks, he was working almost full-time at the police headquarters. That was where he came to be involved in interrogations, which always implied some form of roughing up. The thing is, they never wanted to confess anything. So, obviously, as you guys know, you beat up people inside of interrogations, right? Actually, let me check the comments, actually. Wow, what's the profanity? All right. Sometimes, he went on to explain, you feel like telling them that if they had any consideration for us, they'd cough up and not force us to spend hours on end squeezing the information out of them word by word, but you might as well talk to the wall. Every question gets the answer, I don't know, even when we ask for their names, So, you know how it is. Like, you guys already seen the movie, you're like, hey, what's your name? I don't know. Then you fight. What's your name? I don't know. And then, you keep going, right? If we ask them where they live, they answer, I don't know. So, of course, we had to give them the works. But they screamed too much. At first, it made me laugh, but then it began to unnerve me. And you see what I'm saying? White people are like, at first, and I mean, look, this is the complication of the human experience, okay? This is the complication of the human experience. The reality is this: nobody can force you to talk. No, in fact, no one could force you to no. How do I say this? If you do not want to volunteer something, right, then you don't have to volunteer, right? The thing is that humans, however, have this low threshold for pain, okay? And we have this, physically, we want pain to end, and we'll eventually do things to make pain end. So torture, well, some people say it doesn't work. It's like your best shot. It's your best shot at getting information. It's not your best shot. It's a shot at getting information. Particularly, the information that torture doesn't work is pretty recent. This is 50 years prior to that. So it's just a matter of, if it worked at all, it's better than, just holding people and just saying, what's your name? I don't know. And then, they just live in prison for 20 years. And what's your name? I don't know. You know what I mean? It could be frustrating, to if the information is so important for you, then you want it. You know what I mean? So yes, but the thing to note is that he said at first it makes him laugh, haha, I can beat the screams that they have. But then he said it began to unnerve him. So today I can tell just which stage the interrogation is reached by the sound of the screams. The guy who had been punched twice and given a blow behind the ear had a certain way of talking and screaming and saying that he is innocent. After he had been hanging by his wrists for 2 hours, his voice changes. After the bathtub, right? So that's another torture thing. a different voice, and so on. But it's after the electricity that it becomes unbearable. You think he was going to die at any moment. Of course, there are those who don't scream. Those are the hardliners. But they imagine we are going to kill them immediately. But we're not interested in killing them. What we want is information. We first try and get them to scream, and sooner or later they give in. That's already a victory. Then we continue. See, it's a victory to make people scream, right? But again, the goal is the information, not to kill. Like, they could kill you, right? That's already a victory. Then we continue. Mind you, we'd prefer not to. But they don't make things easy for us. Now I can hear those screams even at home, especially the screams of the ones who died at the police quarter. Doctor, I'm sick of this job. If you can cure me, I'll request a transfer to France. If they refuse, I'll resign, right? So he's not even trying to give up on the police life. He just wants to, like, he's okay with being a police in France, right? But that's what I'm saying. Like, you know, and like the screams of human beings are something else. Actually, I gotta tell you this, guys. This was weird, right? But but like when my son's mother was pregnant, right? She was like she's not the strongest person on the planet, right? But what like sorry, when she was giving birth, like she would just kind of be like, oh, I'm gonna give birth. Oh my gosh, this pain's unbearable. This pain's unbearable. And you're all like, okay, cool, right? And she's like, oh, my pain's unbearable. Woo, this pain, oh man, woo, I want some of that medication or whatever. I need to get rid of this pain, right? And you know, it's like, yeah, all right, you know, just relax. It's probably whatever, right? Anyway, she's you know, pain, whatever she's saying. And then finally, when the baby's coming out, right? You just like the nurse, the midwife is like, you know, sitting in the other room, just chilling. Like, when you're ready for the baby, you know, just let us know, whatever, right? Finally, at some point, she just goes like a monster or something, right? I did that on purpose in case you guys were listening too close. But she just does this monster scream, right? Just like, and it was just like, yeah, all right, it's time, right? And then, you know, baby sure enough showed up soon enough. But it was just like straight out of, you know, like what I'm saying is that humans, you know, we pretend to be, you know, above animals, but we are animals, you know, and like the noises that we make, you know, we kind of restrain it, we kind of limit it because we're in this civilized society, but we're perfectly capable of just auditory emissions that, you know, are something else. I tell you, when I heard that, man, it was like my senses, like what, like I just turned into like caveman or something, you know what I mean? Well, not caveman, you know, we don't really have a history of caveman, but like hunter-gatherer, I guess, you know, where it's just like, oh, we got to help this lady out, you know, there's someone is in trouble, you know what I mean? But anyway, under the circumstances, I put him on sick leave. Since he refused to be admitted to hospital, I treated him, I like how he says to hospital instead of to the hospital. Let's see, something, just going back to the thing. Kofi says, remember, Fanon is a swirler. Yup. Chaka97 says, beating up suspects during an interrogation is unlawful, though. Yeah, this is, unlawful is, lawful is, depends on what, lawful implies that you have a national structure in place, you know? Not just you have a national structure in place, but that the nation itself, thinks it's unlawful. Like basically laws come from nations, right? It has nothing to do with, there's no universal lawful. You know what I mean? There's no lawful is subjective to the nation at hand. So and if the police can do what they want because the state is not, I mean within the law of the state that they're in. So the French interrogating the Algerians, like the French don't really care for the human rights of the Algerians, right? Chaka says very inhumane, sure, right? Revolutionary says no one knows your knowingness, right? I wish I knew what that was for. Studies show torture is not anymore effective. Yeah, studies after remember, Fanon is writing this in 1950, 1960s. You know what I mean? Like those studies are related to the studies that I think you're referencing are related to like the Iraqi war, which is like 20, 30 years later in another country. You know, it's in America, not France, right? And Revolution says, I am being low-key censored, LOL. Yeah, I don't. Yeah, I mean, that's what I'm saying. That's you know, that's the platform. Really, realistically speaking, we should have, like, there was a black-centered, like, RBG tube or something, but I wasn't making videos at the time, you know? I don't know if it's still running, but that's something to look into, right? Under the circumstances, I put him on sick leave. Since he refused to be admitted to hospital, I treated him as a private patient. One day, just before our session was due to begin, I was called back to the ward of an emergency. When he arrived at my house, my wife told A, his white woman, right? He could wait, but he said he preferred to go for a walk in the hospital grounds, thinking he might find me there. A few minutes later, on my way back home, I found him leaning against a tree, covered in sweat and having a panic attack. I put him in the car and drove home. Once we had settled him on the sofa, right, he actually brought him to his house. He told me he had encountered one of my patients, an Algerian patriot, who had been tortured at police headquarters and who was being treated for post-traumatic stress. I then learned that this police officer had been actively involved in torturing this patient. I gave him some sedatives, which calmed his anxiety. After he had left, I visited the ward where the Algerian was being treated. The staff hadn't noticed anything. The patient, however, was nowhere to be found. We eventually discovered him hiding in a bathroom where he was trying to commit suicide. The patient had recognized the police officer and was convinced he had come looking for him to take him back to police headquarters. A came back to see me several times, and after his condition improved rapidly, he was eventually repatriated on medical grounds. As for the Algerian patriot, it took him a long time for him to staff to convince him he had been deluding himself. The policeman was not allowed inside the hospital, that he was tired and he had to be there, he had to be cared for, etc. So that's, you see what I'm saying? Like, you're playing both sides, So the European police officer, right, tortured another person, and you're treating both of them for their psychotic reaction to the same incident, more or less, right? Police officer who was torturing many Algerian people, and one of the Algerian people who were being tortured by many police officers. Okay, they meet each other, and this guy who's like, hey, I'm just in the hospital, I'm just trying to be treated for my psychiatric. Oh no, this guy's came back. And now the police officer somehow, for some reason, is distraught, but this guy is ready to kill himself because he's like, oh no, like this hospital is working with these people. And it's like, that's what, like, what do you work? All right. But you get it. Like, why is he working with these people? Right. So, all right. So here's this. A European police inspector tortures his wife and children. One thing you got to realize too, that people make fun of it. I mean, it's not really something to make fun of, but they say that police officers in America tend to like I think like 67% are like domestic abusers, like a significant percentage of them are beating their wives or whatever. But it is what it is, right? As long as they're, it is what it is, right? But anyway, so a European police inspector tortures his wife and children. R, 30 years old, referred himself to us on his own free will. He's a police inspector who for some weeks realized that something was wrong. Married with 3 children, smokes a lot, 3 packs a day. Dang, 3 packs. Remember, like a pack, I don't know how much a pack in a pack, but let's just say it's 12. He's smoking 36 cigarettes a day, right? He has lost his appetite and his sleep is disturbed by nightmares. These nightmares have no particular distinguishing feature. What bothers him most is what he calls his fits of madness. First of all, he does not like to be contradicted. Doctor, tell me why as soon as someone confronts me, I feel like hitting him. Even outside work, I feel like punching the guy who gets in my way. For nothing at all. Take, for example, when I go to buy the paper, there's a line, so you have to wait. I hold out my hand to take the paper. The guy who runs the newspaper is an old friend of mine, and someone in the line calls out aggressively, wait your turn. Well, I feel like beating him up, and I tell myself, if I could get you, pal, for a few hours, you wouldn't mess with me, right? So you see, like, I mean, you probably pick up on it, but he's incredibly aggressive, incredibly aggressive, and controlling, domineering. He's like the badge made him, feel invulnerable, feel above the law. Judge Dredd, right? I am the law, right? He can't put up with noise. At home, he has a constant desire to give everyone a beating, and he violently assaults his children, even his 20-month-old baby, okay? But what frightened him, and Fanon just like glimpses over this, like that's pretty serious, but okay. But what frightened him was one evening when his wife had bitterly protested he was being too hard on the children. She had even said to him, for goodness sake, you're crazy. He turned on her, beat her, and tied her to a chair, shouting, I'm going to teach you once and for all who's the boss around here, okay? Fortunately, his children began to cry and scream. He then realized the full gravity of his behavior, untied his wife, and the next morning decided to consult a nerve specialist. He had never been like that, he says. He seldom punished his children and never quarreled with his wife. The present problem had occurred since the Troubles. The fact is, he said, we're now being used as foot soldiers. Last week, for example, we operated as if we were in the army. Those guys in the government say there's no war in Algeria and the police force must restore law and order. But there is a war in Algeria, and when they realize it, it'll be too late. The things that gets me the most is the torture. Does that mean anything to you? Sometimes I torture for 10 hours straight, right? So again, like, you know, and I mean, like, you get it. Whether you get it or not. I'll say 20 cigarettes in a pack, yeah. I mean, the thing I can't say, like, I don't even know. Like, it could be 20 cigarettes, obviously. But, again, like, we're talking about Algeria in 1960s or something, right? So, it's like, it might, like, it's most likely it is what you say, right? 20 cigarettes in a pack. But it's also possible that in Algeria, like, you know, everything is different in different countries. You know what I mean? So I can't necessarily say one way or the other. Like, that's one of the things that you realize, too, when you're writing, is that you have to write in the understanding that people will not understand what you're saying if they're not from your country and your time, you know? Like you have to give some sort of reference point. You know, that's why the metric system is so efficient in the sense that I think like a gram or a kilogram is like the size of an apple, you know? But it's like something that's standardized. I mean, apple's not that standardized, but what, like eventually you have to standardize it. So like a second is standardized to the frequency of a particular molecule, you know? Like a particular molecule that moves at a certain frequency. So you'll say it's this many of that molecule. That way you could standardize it across time and space. You can't just say, you know, like you can't just do foot and then be like, well, it's the size of your foot, but then everybody has a different size foot, you know? And well, not everybody has different size foot, but they're like feet are a huge variety. All right. How does torturing make you feel? Right? It wears you out, of course. It's true we take turns, but the question is knowing when to let your colleagues have a go. Everyone thinks he's just about to get the information and is careful not to hand over the customer all nice and ready for the other guy to take all the glory. So sometimes we hand him over and sometimes we don't. So apparently they're like, when they're torturing to get the, you know, to like if when you're torturing and you get the information, right, you get the glory. You know, so they're like, okay, we're gonna torture a little longer because we're probably just about ready, but they're torturing for too long in terms of their own psychology, right? We even offer the guy money, our own pocket money, to get him to squeal. Our problem is we are able to get the guy. Are we able to get the guy to talk? It's a matter of personal success. We're sort of competing. We eventually messed up our fists, so we brought in the Senegalese. But they either hit too hard and mess up the guy in 30 minutes, or not enough and nothing happens. So. Oh yeah, so you see that, and that's the thing. I think I mentioned this yesterday, right? So I think I can mention it today again, or I mentioned it sometime. Maybe it was another podcast, right? But I think it was yesterday. I talked about prisoners and how, you know, if you're arrested, you could be, you know, like somebody could attack you. Yeah, it was yesterday, right? Doesn't happen to Fannie Lou Hamer. With Fannie Lou Hamer, you know, she's a powerful sister. She was, you know, trying to get black folk registered to vote. So on and so forth, right? And the white state didn't like that, right? But instead of themselves beating her up, they got two black men to go into her prison cell and beat her up. You know, I'm telling you, this is something that they can do. So you see right here, he says, look, we're torturing this person. And the thing you have to realize, too, is that when you're hitting somebody, like one of the reasons why you would hit somebody with an object instead of with your hands is because it can hurt your hands, right? It can hurt your hands. Even anybody would hurt your hands because you can hit the wrong part of their body, and your hands and your fists are actually pretty delicate, right? So he says we bring in the Senegalese, and they either hit too hard and mess up the guy, right? So they bring in some big black guy, and he either beats the shit out of them, or they don't do enough, and nothing happens, right? Like when you're torturing somebody, you have to like moderate, I suppose, right? But it's just interesting that, you know, and again, remember, this is Senegalese, right? And you're in Algeria. And here's the thing you have to realize, too. I want you to realize this. So during the conquest of the Moors, okay, during the conquest of the Moors, there were the Haratin. Haratin were essentially West Africans who were used as the body, as the physical force, in the occupation of the whites, right? So white people would also develop a dislike for black people just off of the fact that they would be essentially the Senegalese, right, in the white-Arab relationship. So you see the European is the white here. The Algerian might be the Arab, right? And then they bring in this black person, right? Now, of course, in the conquest of the Moors, in El-Andalus, it was the opposite, where the Arab was the interrogator in a sense, and the white person was the victim, the prisoner. But at the same time, the Senegalese or the Haratin were the muscle, the one that hits too hard, and you just kind of like begin to hate on black folk, right? So in fact, although there were black people in power too, just don't get me wrong, but there were also a lot of black people who were used as like the guards, So in fact, you need to use your head in this kind of work. You need to use your head in this kind of work. You need to know when to tighten your grip and when to loosen it. You have to have a feel for it. When the guy is ripe, there's no point continuing to hit him. That's why it's best to do your own work. You can judge better how you're doing. I'm against those who get others to work the guy over and then pop in every so often to see how he's doing. The golden rule is never give the guy the impression he won't get out alive. The golden rule is to not give people the impression that they won't get out alive. Right? Remember I told you guys about you don't want to surround somebody on 4 sides. You want to surround them on 3 sides. You want them to say, there's a way out, and so that they can take the way out. If they feel like there's no way out, then what's the point of giving you information? You know what I mean? Like what's the point of me giving you information if you're going to kill me? You know what I mean? Like you get the win-win, right? Now, if you're not going to kill me, right, and you get the information, then that makes a little more sense. But if you're going to kill me, then no. Why should I give you information, right? Why give up on my family and my friends? Why give up on my people if that's what you're intending to do? All right. So anyway, let's keep going. I'm kind of thirsty though, real talk. All right, you have to have a feel for it when the guy's right, blah, 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 blah. All right, you can judge how you're doing, what he's doing. The golden rule is never blah, blah. He'll then wonder what's the use of talking if it won't save his life. Exactly. In that case, you'll have no chance at all of getting anything out of him. He has to go on hoping. It's hope that makes them talk. But what bothers me most is this business with the wife. I must have a screw loose somewhere. You've got to straighten me out, doctor. Since his administration refused to give him a sick leave, and the patient did not wish for certification from a psychiatrist, we treated him while on duty. It is easy to imagine the disadvantage of such a procedure. This man knew perfectly well that all his problems stemmed directly from the type of work conducted in the interrogation rooms, though he tried to blame everything on the troubles. Now, I want you to go back to that whole, people like to critique the Nazis for this, right? But the Nazis tend to be like, I'm just doing my job, right? This guy, these white people, this is what you understand. This white guy comes along, you come along, you tell this white guy, okay, so your job is usually to do X, Y, Z. Now what your job is to do is to torture these other people. And he says, okay, sure. Then he's like, oh man, this is actually messing up my psychology because, this is not what I believe in. I don't believe in this myself. I don't believe in this personally, right? I understand the importance of this, but I don't believe in this personally. It's like, yeah, I don't give a shit. Okay? I don't care. Do your job. And white people will do their job. And this is something you have to realize, that as cool as you may think white folk are right now, I mean, if you think that, I don't know. But as much as you may think, hey, like all we need to do is we need to turn up, we need to change our consciousness, then we're going to win because these white folk ain't really doing nothing. They will turn on you in a heartbeat. They will turn on you in a heartbeat. One of the first images I saw of women with guns were women in South Africa and women in Israel. It's to say that, this whole idea of the white woman who doesn't arm herself, they didn't have that because they said to themselves, look, we will turn on these people in a heartbeat. We will give up our culture and our way of being, our peacefulness, our quote unquote civilizedness. We will give that up in a heartbeat. You understand? You have to realize that, this guy might be like you might come pass by a police officer and be like, they're not all bad. They're whatever. They will participate in this torturing and this interrogation in a heartbeat. All of them. This guy sees that it's hurting him in a sense. And he's still like, yeah, let me do it. It's fun. As he had no intention of giving up his job as a torturer, this would make no sense since he would then have to resign. He asked me in plain language to help him torture Algerian patriots without having a guilty conscience, without any behavioral problem, and with a total peace of mind. And you see what I'm saying about these white folk, right? I mean, these black folk. This is what I say about, you know, like your dependency. Here you have one of the police officers who's actively torturing Algerian patriots. The same people actively trying to subdue the war you're allegedly supporting, right? And you're just like, okay, sure, go about your business, have a nice day. You don't compromise anything, you don't nothing. You're just like, okay, sure, we'll help you out. This is that mentality, that humaneness, that really is, you know, it's sickening, you know. And it's like all right, so let's talk about Ma'at, right? Ma'at is one of the laws of Ma'at is defend Ma'at, defeat Isfet. Okay, so this person is actively a part of Isfet, right? Your job is to defeat Isfet. You see, your job is to defeat Isfet. So if you are enabling this person, and this person literally requests that you enable them to hurt the revolutionary cause, right? Then you yourself are doing some Askari stuff. But for some reason you don't see it. And this is the thing you have to realize about this Askari is that sometimes most times they don't see, not most times, but sometimes they don't see it. You know what I mean? And here's the thing, you know, you got to realize that many of our African people, we tend to enable, like many people inside of this Western world tend to enable the Western world. You know, like our jobs are pretty much enabling the Western world. You know, like I said, I was trying not to, but anyway, it is whatever. So let's go back to this. This is Revolutionary Major says this explains AA problems at home. They are in a bad situation as they have no release. Yeah. They have no release. You know. Well, like here's the issue, right? You're in a poor area. Like, let's say you go in the hood, right? You're in a poor area, and your only recourse is to, like, the only wealth coming in for people your age with your experience, are either obviously college, right? But you can't go to college. You know, obviously anybody can go to college, but you don't have the confidence. You know what I mean? You're not Shikari, right? And then either that, it's sports or drugs. You know, like you have very limited opportunities, but because you have those sort of outlets, that's where you go. That's where you're funneled. You know, you have somebody in the neighborhood who is, you know, giving out money or what have you. Revolutionary Nation talked about that yesterday. You know, like a gangbanger may give out, just like literally give out money, right? If he's doing that, you want that position. You look at his educational attainment, right? And you say, hey, look, it didn't really take him an advanced degree to go into that sort of business, right? So Mchaka says an organic or GMO apple. Back then there were only organic apples, dude. Anyway, right? Yeah, they didn't have genetic modifications back then, dude. But no. I understand what he's saying though. Like apples are not all one weight. I don't know if it was an apple per se, but eventually they did like standardize the weights, you know. Revolutionary Major says, LOL Machaka, it could be a crab apple. Yeah. Bit of Medicine's here, so that's a shout out. Shout out to Bit of Medicine. He says it's why boxers wear gloves to protect their own hands. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Sometimes, yes, to protect your own hands, you know? I mean, sometimes it's also to mitigate the damage against another person, but obviously you have to protect your hands, you know? Even if you're not boxing, you would like wrap up your hands. But there are people who train their hands. They like damage the nerves on their hand system, and they're, you know, it's a good thing to do. Revolutionary Nation says, so no matter what, black people are used as a tool for everyone, but never for themselves. Yeah, like you were brought here to be a tool. Mchaka says, don't a station break if you're thirsty. Okay, do a station break. He says, do a station break if you're thirsty. Yeah, for some reason, I don't have the technology for the station breaks. Revolutionary Nation needs to teach me, huh? All right, but anyway, Revolutionary says, this is why you have to be ready to lose it all for your people. Yeah, Take a drink of water, tea. I do, lol. Damn, you guys really concerned about that thirst? I mean, is that audible? Is that audible? I'm like dried out. All right. Let's see. Help him torture Algerian patriots. Yeah, so give him a guilty conscience. So I'm just saying that's what they do. Now, real talk. I only have 5 pages, so it is what it is. Series B. So this is Series B. So he says here we have collected cases of groups where the trigger factor is first and foremost the atmosphere of outright war that reigns in Algeria. So now he's talking about how there's just outright war in Algeria, right? Which is different from the other one. The other one was just triggers from, I don't know, who cares? Right, case number 1, the murder by 2 13 and 14-year-old Algerians of their European playmate. So, yeah, that's big. So this involves a medical and legal examination. 2 13 and 14-year-old Algerian schoolboys are accused of killing one of their European playmates. Now, why do they have European playmates? I don't know. They have admitted to the act. The crime has been reconstructed and photos included in the file. They show one of the children holding their victim while the other stabs him with a knife. The accused did not go back on their statements. We have long conversations with them. The relevant extracts read as follows. What do I want to say about this? Yeah, so that means that it's already a war going on, and then the kids come inside. Oh yeah, one thing I want you to know is that 13 and 14, while they sound young, is not that young. 13 and 14, while they sound young, is not that young. Yeah, I should have muted that. 13 and 14 is not that young. Like, you're conscious of a war going on by that age. You're not necessarily, geopolitically aware, but you understand. You're Algerian, this is European, right? And you want to take part. You want to take a role. Particularly, like, imagine this kid is related to something. So, number 25, let me see what this says, the footnote. This case revealed the existence of a coherent system that leaves nothing intact. The torturer who loves birds or quietly enjoys a symphony or a sonata is simply one stage. The next stage is nothing more than radical and absolute sadism. Okay, so the 13-year-old says, we were not angry with him. Every Thursday, we used to go and hunt together with a slingshot up on a hill behind the village. He was our best friend. He had left school because he wanted to become a mason like his father. One day we decided to kill him because the Europeans want to kill all the Arabs. We can't kill the grown-ups, but we can kill someone like him because he's our own age. We didn't know how to go about with it. We wanted to throw him into a ditch, but this might only have injured him. So we took a knife from home and we killed him. But why did you pick on him? Because he used to play with us. Another boy wouldn't have gone up the hill with us, but he was a friend of yours. So why do they want to kill us? His father is in the militia and says we all ought to have our throats slit. But he didn't say anything like that to you. Him? No. He's dead now. Yes. What does being dead mean? It means it's all over. You go to heaven. Did you kill him? Yes. Are you sorry you killed someone? No, because they wanted to kill us. So do you mind being in prison? No. All right. So, so basically this European boy, his father wants to kill all the Algerians. You understand? He is, again, a settler colonialist. He is, again, when he gets older, he's going to take part in the suppression and oppression of the Algerians on the Algerian soil. You might say, well, they're innocent. He's innocent. You might think, well, he's innocent, right? Or you might think, well, he's friendly. And sure, he might be friendly to you, but again, he's going to grow up to kill Algerian people. Just like his father did. Just like his father's father did. Right? The boys say, no, we can't allow this. We're at war. And the only trouble the only thing I want you to really realize too is that this is how white people look at you. White people look at you not in the sense of, like, they look at you as a different people. And as a different people, they analyze the circumstances at play. And they say, so like, let's say it this way. I might be like, they might look at me and be like, that's a friendly guy, or that's a nice guy. And they say, but I have to suppress and oppress his people in order that my people are not suppressed and oppressed by his people. Like, sure, Oni's a good guy. Sure, Mchaka's a nice guy. But, or sure, Matron is a nice lady, right? But if I do not suppress and oppress them, right, then they may suppress and oppress my people. So I have to suppress it and oppress them, notwithstanding their individual status. That's how you, like, it's a shame. It's not a shame. It's not a shame. I shouldn't say that. I don't want you to think that I think that's a shame. I want you to understand that, yeah, that's the way of the world. And does he mind being in prison? Again, you're only going to be in prison depending on who's in power, who wants to put you in jail. Does a white boy want to put you in jail? Absolutely. The Algerians might say, nah, you're free to go. Not that serious. Did what you had to do. We were at war. That's the way of the world. This is why, you see black people and white people get different sentences, and you're like, oh, how unfair. How unfair. But, if a white guy did that, yeah. If a rich white guy did that, yeah. He's a rich white guy. We want him outside. We don't want you outside. You cross the street, funny. I don't go to prison. Just get out of my sight. This guy, yeah, he stole a bunch of money from people like you. Okay. He caused a bunch of you to be homeless. Okay. He was a judge and he sent a lot of you to prison. Man, and get this guy a fucking medal. White boy walks into a church and shoots it up. Get him some Burger King. That's the best torture we could think of. You know what I'm saying? He didn't do anything wrong. Killed a bunch of silly Christians. B, the 14-year-old. Boy is different, very different from his classmate. He's almost a man, an adult, judging from his muscular control, his physiognomy, and the tone and content of his answer. He does not deny killing either. Why did he do it? He does not answer the question, but asks me if I have ever seen a European in prison. Has there ever been a European arrested and in prison for the murder of an Algerian? I replied that, in fact, I had never seen any Europeans in prison. You see that? See, because you're talking about police, like, again, this is why you want to go out and read, man. This is why you want to read, because what happens in reading is that you begin to realize that there's systemic ways of this world. Like I said, I read Lenin, and Lenin's talking about police brutality in Russia. Okay, no black folk, no white folk. He's saying police brutality because they had a different mentality against the state. So and that's what it is. The state has an objective, and if you're against that objective, you go to prison. The Europeans do not go to prison in Algeria. It's not a crime for the Europeans to do anything against the Algerians. See? So, and the 14-year-old picked up on this. And like I said, I knew a 12-year-old, 13-year-old. They're pretty cognizant. They're pretty conscious. They're not going to be as worldly and intelligent as somebody like me, per se, right? Because, but like, how many people are? I'm joking. That's that grad school. That's that grad school. That's how I'm talking to. But anyway, but let's be real. Like, they understand, they conceive basic things. Police brutality. Now, see, you identify police brutality with yourself for some reason. You're like, man, we've been fighting police brutality forever. This is not a black American thing. This is something that you could see in Russia. This is something you could see in Algeria. And so the boy continues. And yet there are Algerians killed every day, aren't there? Yes. There are Algerians killed every day, but there are no Europeans in prison. So he says, so why are there only Algerians in prison? How do you explain that? I can't. But tell me why you killed this boy who was your friend. Now, you see, this guy, he should... See, this is what I'm saying. Like, sometimes you have to... Like, that's one of the... This is right here. This is already a problem in this world, right? The problem is that a lot of people don't know anything. Why could you not explain why there are only Algerians in prison, right? In this European colony. Why can't you explain that? And the thing is that he's not saying I can't because he doesn't want to. He's saying I can't because he can't. Because he, in a socialist mentality, you're saying, well, I think I should be fair. I think I should be equal representation. Something stupid like that. Right? But this is why, like I said, I want to, like, I know this person in prison, and they're calling me like, man, you just wouldn't understand what it's like. And I tell them, I say, look, because you're in a colonial situation, blah, 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 blah. And they're like, okay, I guess you do understand. You understand? I guess you do understand. But that's what it is. Like, you don't get an understanding of the world. This guy doesn't, like, the people that call me from prison, they don't know. They don't know why they're in prison. They're like, man, why? How is it illegal to, do X, Y, Z, blah, blah, blah. And you're like, well, because you're in a colony. And they don't want you doing X, Y, Z. It doesn't matter if it's something that's, you should be able to do because of your human status. They don't want you doing it. You know, it's like right here. Why are the Algerian in prison for murder and the Europeans not in prison for murder? Because the Europeans in power don't want you killing Europeans. They don't care if you kill Algerians. Stupid. They don't care. It's about what they want. Again, the whole world is subjective. The whole world is subjective. That might be the see. If that wasn't too, yeah. I mean, that could have been a good title for a book, you know. But anyway, hope y'all appreciate that. Let me see the comments. This brother just said, "Ew, bro, mute the mic, mad dusty." Yo, I should have muted the mic. You're right. I ain't gonna cap. I don't know. I didn't. You see, the thing is, this mic is like, it picks up on any damn audio, you know? All right. Let's do a love call me Dusty. All right. So children understand the threats presented on them always. This explains proximity crime. It's so simple for children. This is revolutionary matron. Power prescribes the penalty. Exactly. Power gives the penalty. Kofi says, I remember watching an interview with the Jared Taylor that caused the church shooting, and he defended the shooter. Yeah. I don't know why he would defend the shooter, but yeah, I mean, like I don't know why. But here's the thing: white people say to themselves, "Our lives are better than your." We create this community for our people, not for your people. If your people die in the creation of this community, say hi to the Native Americans. That's what they say. But if our people die in the creation of this community, then something is wrong, right? We don't like it. We want to investigate that. We want to prevent that because the community is created for us, the white people. Not us like me, but us like the white people. Hey, so I'll tell you, have you heard about the rivet business? Yes, 2 of my family were killed that day. So he says his family were killed in the rivet business. Actually, he gives a footnote. So the footnote is, Rivet is a village in the region around Algiers, which became headline news one day in 1956. One evening, the village was raided by French militia who dragged 40 men from their beds and murdered them. So imagine that, just a random village, right? And the French raid the village, grab the men, and murder them, right? And this boy is related to them, okay? This boy is related to them. So he asks Fanon, he says, I'll tell you, have you heard about the rivet business? Yes. 2 of my family were killed that day. At home, they say the French had sworn to kill us all, one after the other. Has any Frenchman been arrested for all those Algerians that were killed? I don't know. Well, no one has been arrested. I wanted to take to the mountains, but I'm too young. So the other boy and I said we would kill a European. Why? In your opinion, what do you think we should have done? I don't know, but you are a child, and the things that are going on are for grown-ups. But they kill children too. But that's no reason for killing your friend. Well, I killed him. Now you can do what you like. Did this friend do anything to you? No, he didn't do anything. Well, that's all there is to it. It's like the village that was raided. And of course by the child's perspective. Right? Did the village do anything? Did the 40 men that were taken out of bed and murdered, did they do anything? A lot of times you have to realize that. And see, some of you, I don't know how you guys get the impression of this. I don't know how you guys get the impression of this. But some of you might be like, you might be like, well, yeah, this is wrong. Why did the kids do that? The white boy was innocent, But you got to realize that, some people take it upon themselves to say blood for blood. Like we're sending a message. You kill one of our people, we'll kill one of your people. Just don't kill our people. Zubiri, in the book Zubiri, so that's a really good book. Obviously I wrote it. But Zubiri is, there's a part of Zubiri where he's like, yeah, blood for blood. There's also like a book by, one of those famous sister who writes books. I can't remember her name right now. But there's this famous black woman who writes books. And one of her books, like Song of Solomon by me, like the same author who wrote Song of Solomon, she talks about that, like one of her characters talks about that. You have to realize that that's one of the alternatives you have. Instead of, like for instance, Trayvon Martin is killed, and what are the consequences? We'll leave it to the state. The state decides not guilty, and that's it. And you go about your life, right? In another world, it's like Trayvon Martin is killed, and you might not get to Zimmerman. But you get to some white boy and you say, that's what happens, right? Or you get to more than one white boy and you say, that's what happens. And then what happens is this, that other response takes a bigger calling. Now, it might be that, the people who kill, they then, like in the Song of Solomon book, I think what happened was that it was like a secret organization that killed random white folk in response to, random black folk deaths. And, they made sure not to get caught or something like that, right? It might be that, people who do this stuff get caught, made examples of, and so on and so forth. And, eventually that all stops, right? And it doesn't make that serious a noise. But it could be that if a people decided, no, we're going to collectively do that, right? Well, it may come down to either that people being exterminated or, peace, It's complicated, but again, there's a different interactions, different reactions. Originally says Kyle R. Summer 2020. Kyle R. Summer 2020. I don't know what that means. Kyle R. Kyle R. I guess you're saying that something happened in the summer of 2020 with Kyle something. Is that Kyle Rittenhouse or something like that?
Yes, because we can't say his name.
No, I don't know who that is. You talking about the boy in the protest? Wait, why can't we say his name? Wait, the guy who killed the people at the protest? No. Wait, why can't we say his name? I don't get like, what? Is he free or something? Hey, what's going on? I'm pretty sure we can say his name. I don't think he's at large. But yeah, actually I don't know which one you're talking about because I don't remember his name. That's the one who killed. Is the one who killed the people in the church, or the one who killed the people at the protest? Oh, maybe she's writing it down. She said yes, but I guess I don't know which one. Like, you can't say Candyman 3 times. I don't get it. All right, let me just look up because you guys said yes to like a double-sided question. Kyle Rittenhouse. Okay, so he. Oh yeah, he's the one who wrote. Yeah, so I think you could say his name. I don't think he's But yeah, I think he killed a bunch of white boys though. I think he killed a bunch of white boys. And so now it's kind of like something, but it was also a bunch of white boys attacking him. I guess I don't know. It was different. But anyway, case number 2. But yeah, they did make him walk away. Paranoid delusions and suicidal behavior disguised as terrorism act in a young 22-year-old Algerian. So. Paranoid delusions and suicidal behavior disguised as terrorist acts in a... Okay, so they're thinking that he's suicidal, but he's also seemingly attacking other people. So this patient was referred to by the hospital by the French judiciary authorities following a medical and legal examination by a French psychiatrist practicing in Algeria. The patient was emaciated and in a state of confusion. His body was covered in ecchymosis, and he was unable to absorb any food owing to 2 fractures of the jaw, so they probably beat him up. For over 2 weeks, the patient was fed intravenously. After 2 weeks, his thinking became less blank, and we were able to establish contact. We managed to reconstruct the young man's dramatic story. During adolescence, he had been an ardent scout and became one of the leaders in the Muslim scout movement. A scout, isn't that interesting? So in America, you had this scout organization, but apparently it's like pretty probably international because you got the Muslim scout movement. It's interesting that we don't have that for us as an African people, at least not in the West. It's pretty interesting that we don't, because that seems like something that, teaching boys men skills seems like something that's pretty important. But anyway, at age 19, he completely abandoned the scouts to devote himself entirely to his profession. A passionate student of mechanical data processing, he dreamed of becoming a leading specialist in the field. November 1st, 1954 found him absorbed in strictly professional matters. At the time, he showed no interest in the national liberation struggle. He had already forsaken his former friends. He said he was at the time entirely devoted to improving his technical abilities. In mid-1955, however, during a family reunion, he suddenly got the impression his parents considered him a traitor. After a few days, this fleeting impression lost its edge, but deep down, he felt strangely anxious and uneasy. So basically, his family is like, and that's something that's pretty interesting. So he's just a professional. He's just a professional. He doesn't care about the war. He doesn't care about the fight for liberation. I don't know what year the fight for liberation is, but it seems like it's around this time. Oh yeah, I think they said the war already started. But he's not even taking part he's like, no, I'm just trying to do mechanical data, whatever, right? And that sounds like data processing, which sounds like pre-computer stuff. So like, he's doing something pretty damn impressive for his time. But his family's like, yeah, we're not impressed. You should be fighting on the front lines like your brother. You know what I mean? But that's also really telling, because like some people will say that, like, let's say you're let's pick on him, Chaka, actually. But like a lot of people from Nigeria are known to be like very intent on professional development, to the point where, for instance, there's this lady who's I think I remember her name, but she's on SNL. Okay, SNL is like it's called Saturday Night Live, and it's a like a comedy sketch show or something like that. Yeah, comedy sketch show, white people. It used to be not really that funny. It's probably not that funny, but whatever, right? But there's a sister on it. She's like from Nigeria, and on one episode when it's like Mother's Day or whatever, she has like her mother there, and she's like, "Hey, Mom, are you proud of me?" And she's like, and her mom's like, "Yeah." And she's like, "Would you rather me be a doctor?" And she's like, "Absolutely." But like, there's this impression that the Nigerian parent would like really push their child to be a professional doctor, right? To pursue a doctoral degree. And it's the same I hear with Chinese parents as well. A lot of people would say that, right? So here's this guy who actually is going that route. He's going that route of mechanical development, but instead of, and so his parents do the kind of the opposite and say, "Are you a part of the liberation struggle?" "No." "Okay, we're ashamed of you." And I think that right there is telling. That right there is actually very telling in the sense of, that's really how a parent should push their child. That, yeah, you do have that professional development, but let's say if your people are not free, then put yourself towards that, in a sense. Now, I mean, it goes both ways. Obviously, if you're doing something that can benefit the liberation movement, then, just explain that. But it's just, I think that's a pretty interesting thing to put out. And plus, you want to see how Chaka could get pushed to to explain, but it didn't happen. All right, so Melanin 100% wrote something. It says message retracted, and then Revolutionary Matron says when you type his name, it gets deleted. So, and it might be that Melanin 100% tried to type his name and it got deleted. Who knows? But I don't see anything that signifies that Revolutionary Matron tried to type it, so I don't know. But yeah, that's pretty interesting. You trying to trigger me? Yeah, I'm trying to, man. Nigeria. Oh yeah, Ghanaian jollof rice is better than Nigerian. In fact, Senegalese jollof rice is better than Nigerian. All right. Anyway, let's see this guy.
Chill out.
Yo, I'll tell you, man, these Nigerians are predictable, man. Anyway, all right. Sorry. So anyway, in March 1955, and see, look, you guys gotta realize that. All right, that's obviously he's joking, but like white people know how to do that to you too. You know what I mean? In fact, if you go to the hood, that's all the police are doing. Like, they're really trying to push the buttons of black folk, to get them to respond and then, possibly arrest them. In fact, sometimes they even do this thing called, like, just leaving a car unlocked and just leaving it there. You know what I mean? Or like, yeah, just doing something that, I mean, obviously, stealing a car is illegal, obviously. But, I think white people do this kind of stuff. Like what happens with the car is that you get in the car, you drive it off, and then the car would lose power, and the door would be locked, and then you can't even escape. You can't even run away. They would just pick you up in a car that can't move. Like, you pretty much just lock yourself in. Pretty like it's a crappy tactic because, it's totally unnecessary. It's just somebody taking advantage of an opportunity, sure. And, you might be saying that's wrong, but, part of the reason why they're taking advantage of the opportunity is because they see some easy money, And it's not like that's a characteristic flaw. You know what I mean? Like, easy money is easy money, Actually, just the other day, I was in this store and somebody just was offering my child some candy. Like, it's just like, what? I mean, he didn't take it because he doesn't really engage strangers like that, or he didn't want to take it. But, I made him take it, kind of. But notwithstanding that, it's like, that's what it is. That's the, like if it's an easy opportunity, go for it, Well, not go for it, obviously, but it's wrong to, it's like somebody sets you up for an easy opportunity. It's not as, like, it doesn't implicate what you think it does. You know, it doesn't implicate what you think it does. So anyway, in mid-1955, however, during a family reunion, he suddenly blah, blah, blah. So he decided, therefore, to spend a little time as possible eating and talking with his family and locked himself up in his room, avoiding any contact. It was under these circumstances that the catastrophe occurred. One day in the middle of the street, around 12:30, he distinctly heard a voice call him a traitor. He turned around but saw nobody. He hurried on and decided to stay away from work. He stayed in his room and did not have any dinner. It was during that night he suffered the attack. For 3 hours, he heard all kinds of insults, voices crying in his head and in the darkness. Traitor, coward, all your brothers are dying. Traitor, traitor. Now here's the thing I want you to notice, though. This kind of stuff doesn't happen normally. Like, this guy might just be crazy. You know? I mean, like we don't hear voices, right? And that's the thing you gotta realize. Like, it's possible that white folk do hear voices. You know? I don't know if any black folk hear voices. I don't think so. I mean, it might be the case. I don't know. I don't hear voices. I can tell you that. But anyway, he was gripped by an indescribable anxiety. For 18 hours, my heart beat at 130 beats per minute. I thought I was going to die. That's actually a lot, I think. Anyway, for that moment, yeah, that's actually pretty a lot. Ooh, 130 beats per minute. Now, I don't know if he's exaggerating, but that's like twice a second, over twice a second. From that moment on, the patient could no longer swallow a thing. He got thinner by the minute, kept himself in pitch darkness, and refused to see his parents. Around the third day, he isolated himself in prayer. He told me he remained kneeling 17 to 18 hours a day. That's crazy. On the fourth day, acting on impulse like a madman with a beard, which must have made him look even more like a madman, he went out without his usual jacket or tie. Once he stepped into the streets, he had no idea where to go, but he walked in, and after a while found himself in the European sector. His physical appearance, he could be taken for a European, seems to have protected him from being stopped and questioned by the French police, whereas next to him, Algerian men and women were being arrested, roughed up, insulted, and searched. Now, that's actually pretty interesting. So you notice that, right? So he's an Algerian, but he looks like a European. You understand? So you know, like I said, you know, I keep letting you guys know. When you're reading this, you take it with a grain of salt because you realize, hey, these could be freaking white people. The guy looks like a European, right? Physical, but he's an Algerian. Now, of course, he's walking around like a madman, full beard, you know, and, you know, distraught or whatever. And the white people are just not even questioning, whereas they're stopping these other Algerian people, you know? And again, it's just like on appearance, more or less. Paradoxically, he had no identity papers on him. The fact that the enemy patrols essentially shoved him consideration confirmed his delusion that everyone knows he's on the side of the French. The soldiers themselves have orders to leave him alone. So he's like, I'm not a traitor. And then he kind of like walks into the European quarters, and the Europeans don't even harass him. And he's like, wait, am I a traitor? You know, like, wait, what? Anyway, so moreover, the looks of the Algerians arrested with their hands behind their necks, waiting to be searched, seemed to him to be full of contempt. Stricken by an uncontrollable agitation, he quickly strode away. It was then he found himself in front of the French staff headquarters. At the gate stood several soldiers armed with machine guns. He walked over toward the soldiers, hurled himself onto one of them, and tried to grab his machine gun, shouting, "I'm an Algerian!" Right? So, yeah, you get it. Like, he goes to a bunch of guards with machine guns and just jumps on one of them. Like, kill me. You know what I mean? Quickly brought under control, he was led into the police offices where they stubbornly tried to make him confess the names of the leaders and various members of the network for which he was supposedly working. So they figured it was a terrorist attack, right? Because they're like, wow, you know, you just walked here, like, confess. So after a few days, the police and the soldiers realized they were dealing with a sick individual. An examination was ordered that concluded he was suffering from mental disorders and should be admitted to a hospital. All I wanted to do, he told us, was to die. Even at the police station, I believed and hoped that after they had tortured me, they would kill me. I was happy to be beaten because they proved they considered me to be one of the enemy as well. I couldn't go on hearing those accusations and doing nothing. I'm not a coward. I'm not a sissy. I'm not a traitor, right? So that's actually pretty interesting. That's actually pretty interesting in the sense of, he said even the police said, that he wanted to die and he just rushed himself on these other people and they assumed he was a terrorist and they beat him and he was happy with that. And he was a sick individual. And so one of the things you got to realize is that there could be a lot of sick individuals in our community right now. You know, a lot of people that might be going through this whole, you know, hearing voices and and needing to prove that there's some way. Oh no, the thing I wanted to tell you actually was this: if they had killed him, he could have been a martyr. Like, he could have been somebody that they use as an example of, oh, you see how they do our people, right? Like, this is what they do to our people. This is how they do. This guy was a data processing thing. He has no loyalty towards the Nigerian cause. He's just an innocent guy, and then they killed him, right? You could change the narrative. Now, the real narrative, although they didn't kill him, but the real narrative would be that he was this crazy guy who had a pretty comfortable life and was just locked away in like computer programming before there were computers, I guess, right? And he's just doing that, and then his parents triggered him to think he was a traitor, so he went and tried to attack these people to prove he wasn't, and like die that way. He was suicidal in a sense, right? But again, like, it depends on who's telling the story, because that actually happened in the past where there's this brother. I used to tell the story myself, to be honest. There's this brother who was killed, I think wrongfully accused of raping a white woman, right? Which is why you would kill him. But he himself actually had mental illness, and they shouldn't have blamed him for it, obviously. But the white guy who did rape the white girl, wasn't finna go to prison when you could put a black person in prison for that. But that's obviously another story. So let's see. That was actually the end of it. You said you trying to trigger me. Melon 100% does a face. Revolutionary Matron says bait car and bait drugs. Yeah, they have laid so much bait in the hood that people turning in bags of money. Yeah. Sometimes they would put like guns in like like obvious hiding spots, for kids to find. You know what I mean? Like obvious, like, oh, look, behind the trash can, what is this? A bag of guns? Shit. You know what I mean? And then kids will have guns. And then you would search a kid and be like, hey, wait, why do you have a gun? Why do you have an unlicensed gun on you? You're going to jail. You know what I mean? Melon 100% says no way. I wish I would. I don't know how to make it so I can see the comments while they're going on. I might. Yeah, there's actually no way. I mean, unless I make my screen smaller, right? But all right. Actually, let me see how that looks on the. Let's see. I don't want to make my screen too small, and then it doesn't. Yeah, it won't work. I mean, I'll have to think of a setup that makes it so that I can see both screens at the same time, because that's not cool. All right. I'm not used to people actually writing. All right. Bait Car. They have a TV show for it. Yeah, they have I saw that TV show. That's what I was thinking of. Revolutionary Mitchell says officers dressed up as prostitutes. Ew. There was an episode of South Park like that. I mean, I don't really watch South Park, but I saw an episode where the guy, like, he dressed up as a prostitute, and then he went through with the whole act, and then said, "You're under arrest." They were like, "Why'd you go through the whole act?" All right. So anyway, Melon 100% says, if you're there with a child and it's in a wrapper, then it's cool. Oh, the candy? Yeah. No, I'm just saying that people like give you free stuff. Hearing voices is a sign of schizophrenia, bruh. Yeah. There are plenty of black folks that deal with schizophrenia. So Mchaka's probably dealing with schizophrenia, so he thinks other people are dealing with it. But I doubt it. All right. So Revolutionary Matron says the new immigrant looks like Eurasians. The new immigrants look like Eurasians. You mean in France back then? Or the Algeria? Well, that's what I'm saying. Like, it looks like Algerians. Yeah, it looks like some Algerians can look like Europeans. My thing is this: the Arabs, I think they are mixed people already. Cause just like I think Latinos are mixed people, and I think Algerians and Latinos look the same, So I think that's really like what it is. That and mixed people tend to have a range of looks to the point where, like, they would look like either a mixed person or even a black person with light skin, So that's the other thing there too. But anyway, besides from that though, I think that's 204. That was cool. Several case stories. She's like, I think they are cousins to the Eurasians. They're definitely Eurasians themselves. But I think they're like historically they have some sort of mixture to them. I mean, people who look at the Bible, for instance, as like some of the Bible is like historical, and that's why it's not entirely bad. Like it's not like it's like a historical fiction, So they will tell you some sort of historically relevant things, but basically, I think the Semites, sometimes they say Semite means half people, like people who are descended from the nomads and the agriculturalists, So they are a blend of two different people. And you'll notice that a lot of times you'll have the quote unquote Semite leaders marrying African people, and then having descendants. But like that really is to tell you that the main thing for that story is to tell you that their descendants are mixed, or that they are in fact mixed people. Because essentially, if you're telling the story, you're telling a story of your ancestors. You're not telling a story of your present day circumstances. So, like this, for instance, this Moses character. Like if Moses is your ancestor, or Abraham is your ancestor, and he has children with an African woman, then you're basically saying that if you're an Abrahamic person, that you're mixed. You understand? That in fact you are descended from a people who are descended from two people, and I think that's what's like semi is like half, I would say, but you don't have to even go like that. You could just say that, realistically speaking, the document tells you that these people will be mixed. Like that's the whole objective of like that. That's the whole reason why they're telling you this. Because again, they're not writing this as it's happening. They're writing this much after it happens. So it's not that these things happened as much as there's something to glean, something to learn from it. And so one of the main things to learn from it is that they were a mixed people, and it's not just Abraham, it's also Moses, it's also other people. It's just they kind of mix with another people, or and that's and like the looks make it so, to the point where, if I show you an Arab guy or a Latino or whatever, right, you'll think so on and so forth. Anyway, so Kofi says black people with light skin are mixed. Yeah, a lot of times, very often, black people with light skin. Very often. It's only a matter of like again, like I said, it depends on where you come from. Because in Africa you will find light skinned people who are not mixed, but you also will find African people who are mixed, and so like usually in America, it's the case that if you're light skinned, you're mixed. But it also could be that if you're light skinned, it could be like a random mutation, because the thing is that with regards to random mutations, that's a regular normal occurrence, and it's not something that could be predictable. So like I said, like you could have two black parents and then develop blue eyes, not for mixture or not for having inherited it, but just as a matter of a random mutation happening to give you thing. Because the thing with the human being is that replication is not perfect, and what imperfect replication basically means, especially with how large our population is, but imperfect replication basically means that there are going to be physical features that appear within a people, but that will not necessarily entail that the descendant is a different race than their parents. You know what I mean? So just because the child has blue eyes, right, it doesn't mean that the child is not what their parents are, right? Now, it's possible that their parents are mixed, possibly, but it's, or possibly in some weird, like some long-term background, they are mixed, and that sort of gene comes up, and then you could say, well, none of them are black. That's a possibility too. But usually, like let's say you could, but the possibility still exists that you'll have black people with the proper phenotype that would constitute black, and then their child will have a different phenotype. And of course, this is something that would have to have happened in human history, only because if it didn't happen in human history, then everybody on the planet would be black. Because if replication were perfect, then there would never be a case of anybody not being black. Not just that, it would never be a case of us as human beings, not like of human beings even existing. We would still be Homo habilis, or even before that, we would still be lizards. You get what I'm saying? Because if replication never has its flaws, then the evolution of a people will never occur either. You know, like we would still just be bacterium or something, you know, or single-celled organisms. It would just be single-celled organisms that perfectly replicate. What happens is that in the course of, you know, not just human history, but living history, this single-celled organism became a complex organism, which became this, which became that, which became this, which became that, which became this. As I say, that humans are constantly in constant change and transformation, and those minuscule changes do not necessarily amount to you know, our understanding of what races are. You know, as I say, like another example that we all are familiar, or more familiar with, is like somebody with like developing a mental illness, right? Or a developmental illness, right? That's also a result of genetic anomalies, right? It doesn't make them any less or more African, you know. But everything that comes about with us, whether it's phenotypical or just genotypical, all of these us being living organisms with an imperfect replication. And so that imperfect replication makes it so that we like changes come about naturally. But you know, that's just you know, just normal science that, you know, we as African people should study, but also should study it on our own and independently. But
already am.
Oh my gosh, this arrogant son of a nice lady. All right. Anyway, so right. All right. No, anyway, but all right, family. That's pretty much the end of this. We only got 3 more episodes left. Hope you guys are excited as I am. But that's a deep reading. And no, I don't plan on doing any more deep readings in the morning. This is actually a lot for me. I don't know how.
We're looking forward to read another book.
Sure. So anyway, I don't know how Revolutionary Agent does it, but you know, I'm gonna go sit back.
She a real one.
She a real one for sure. You already know that. Doesn't mean that anybody else isn't real. It's just
Nah, that's what it means.
Nah, I don't mean that, man. All right, but anyway, thank you so much, family, for joining. That's a deep reading. So of course, Shem Yem Hotep, Anku Ja Seneb Neb, Amen Ma'a Dua Netcher, and